Have you ever felt that someone you love deeply is keeping a secret from you? Something so close to the surface, you can almost feel it, but you can't quite name it? That's how it started for me. Daniel, my son, has been my whole world since I lost my husband. After his father passed, it was just the two of us against everything life threw our way. We had this rhythm, this bond that felt unbreakable. We had our little rituals, Sunday morning pancakes with too much syrup, late-night movie marathons when it stormed outside, and those moments of quiet understanding when words weren't needed. But over the last few months, something had shifted. Daniel was still the kind, thoughtful boy I had raised, but there was a distance I couldn't ignore. He would linger in his room for hours, his once open demeanor now replaced with introspection. He'd smile, but it didn't always reach his eyes. I chalked it up to his age. He was 21 now, navigating adulthood and all the confusion that comes with it. Yet, a part of me couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it. Welcome to Anonymous Stories. Over here, we narrate stories we receive in our mail from people all over the world. Today, we share a story from one lady from Paris. The names used are not the real names of the individual characters. Support our channel by subscribing to our channel, like and share this story with your friends and loved ones. Now let's get into the story. One evening, as I was tidying up his room, a habit he playfully teased me about, I stumbled upon a small, leather-bound notebook half-tucked beneath his bed. At first, I didn't think much of it. Daniel was always scribbling, sketching, or jotting down thoughts. He had an artist's soul. But then, I hesitated. The notebook seemed different. Personal. Almost sacred. Now, let me ask you this, if you thought the answers to your most troubling questions were right in front of you, would you look? I told myself it wasn't right. It was his. I should respect his privacy. But as I sat there on the edge of his bed, staring at the journal in my hands, the worry gnawed at me. What if he was struggling with something? What if he needed help and didn't know how to ask? The curiosity became too much to bear. I opened it. The first few pages were harmless, sketches of landscapes, random musings about the universe, quotes he found inspiring. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. But then, as I turned the pages, the tone shifted. Daniel's words became raw, conflicted, and heartbreaking. He spoke of feelings he didn't understand, emotions he was terrified to voice. The entries were fragmented but unmistakable in their meaning. These feelings, these forbidden emotions, were directed at me. I closed the diary with trembling hands, my heart racing. My world, which had always felt so solid and safe, seemed to crack beneath me. I stared at the journal, my mind spinning with questions. How long had he been feeling this way? Did he know? And most importantly, what was I supposed to do now? I sat there in silence, the room eerily quiet around me. Daniel would be home soon, and I knew I had to compose myself. But how? How do you look into the eyes of your child, your anchor, and pretend everything is the same? Tell me, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you confront him? Would you hide what you found? Leave your thoughts below. I need to know I'm not alone in this. It wasn't just the words I'd seen, it was how they lingered in my mind, reshaping every interaction between us. In the days that followed, I couldn't stop replaying his entries in my head. Every glance, every word, every gesture suddenly felt like it carried a hidden meaning. Had he always looked at me like that? I couldn't be sure anymore. I began to notice things I'd dismissed before. Like how he'd linger in the doorway after we talked, as though he didn't want the moment to end. Or how he'd avoid mentioning girls or dating altogether, even when I playfully teased him about finding someone. There was a strange intensity in the way he cared for me, from the way he'd make sure I always had my favorite tea to the way he'd cancel plans with his friends to spend time with me instead. And then, there were the moments I couldn't ignore, the fleeting glances that lingered just a beat too long, the softness in his voice when he said my name. I felt trapped between two equally unbearable emotions, guilt for invading his privacy and fear of what the truth might mean. Was this my fault? Had I unintentionally blurred lines while trying to be everything for him after his father's death? The questions consumed me, but the answers remained elusive. Let me ask you something. If you were holding onto a secret that could shatter someone you loved, would you confide in someone else, or would you keep it locked away? In my desperation, I sought help. I couldn't share this burden with a friend or anyone who knew us. It was too delicate, too personal. Instead, I found a counselor online, one who offered anonymous sessions. I told them about a mother who had discovered her adult son's confusing feelings. The counselor listened, their voice calm and non-judgmental. It's important to approach this with compassion, they said. Feelings aren't actions, and emotions can sometimes be misplaced, especially in close relationships. The key is to establish boundaries while maintaining trust. Their words gave me a sliver of clarity. They suggested open dialogue but warned me to proceed gently. You must help him understand these feelings without shame, but also guide him toward healthier attachments. And above all, set clear boundaries. Easier said than done. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't stop imagining what that conversation would look like. My mind raced with questions. What if I made things worse? What if he felt betrayed or humiliated? What if, in trying to help him, I lost the bond we'd built? I turned off the bedside lamp and stared into the darkness, feeling the weight of the diary still hidden in my drawer. Could I do this? Did I even have the courage to try? Tell me, what would you do? Would you have that conversation, or would you hope the feelings faded on their own? Leave a comment, I want to hear your thoughts. After days of restless deliberation, I decided that silence wasn't an option. But I couldn't confront him directly, it would shatter him, and maybe me, too. Instead, I began threading subtle questions into our everyday conversations. One evening, while we were washing dishes, a quiet moment we often shared, I casually asked, "Do you ever think about love? What it means for people?" Daniel hesitated, his hand stilling in the soapy water. "Sometimes," he said. His voice was quiet, guarded. "What do you think it looks like?" I pressed gently. He shrugged, avoiding my gaze. "I guess it's when someone makes you feel like you're everything." His answer was simple, but it carried a weight I couldn't ignore. I smiled softly and said, "Love is tricky. It's not always clear where admiration ends and something deeper begins. Sometimes we confuse the two." For a moment, Daniel just stood there, staring at the suds swirling in the sink. Then, he nodded, as if my words had settled somewhere within him. Over the next few weeks, I found ways to continue these conversations. I spoke about my own experiences, about how grief can twist our emotions and how loneliness can blur boundaries. Daniel began to share pieces of himself, though cautiously. One night, he admitted, "I've been struggling to figure things out. Sometimes, I feel like my emotions don't make sense." "Feelings rarely do," I replied, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "But it's okay to talk about them. Sometimes saying them out loud makes them less heavy." His wall started to come down. He began writing less in his diary and instead took up painting, a talent he'd always had but rarely pursued. His canvases were bold and expressive, each one a glimpse into his mind. For a while, I thought we were finding our way. Daniel's laughter came more easily, his shoulders seemed less tense. But progress isn't a straight line, is it? Let me ask you something. Have you ever thought you were fixing something, only to realize it might still be falling apart? One afternoon, while tidying his room, I found a folded note tucked inside his sketchbook. My heart sank as I read his words. "I feel like I'm trapped inside myself. I know what I feel is wrong, but I don't know how to stop. It's like I'm running in circles, and there's no way out." I sat down on the edge of his bed, the weight of the note pressing on me. I had thought we were moving forward, but this felt like a step back, a crack in the fragile progress we'd made. What would you do in this moment? Would you keep pushing, or would you take a step back and let time do the healing? "Daniel," I began, sitting on the edge of his bed. "Can we talk?" He glanced at me, his expression wary but open. Of course, Mom. What's wrong? He had just finished another painting, a vivid swirl of blues and yellows that seemed to pulse with energy, and was cleaning his brushes when I walked into his room. My heart was pounding, but I masked it with a soft smile. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I've noticed that you've been carrying something heavy. And I know it hasn't been easy for you to talk about it. But I think it's time we face it together. His eyes flickered with something, fear, maybe, but he nodded, setting his brushes aside. Sometimes, I continued, our feelings can confuse us. Especially when we're going through loss or change. After your dad passed, I clung to you, and you clung to me. We became everything to each other because we needed to survive. But that kind of closeness can blur the lines. Daniel's jaw tightened, and he looked away. I didn't mean for things to get complicated, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I know, I said, reaching for his hand. And I want you to know that feelings, no matter how confusing or overwhelming, don't make you a bad person. They're just signals, trying to tell us something. It's what we do with them that matters. He looked at me then, his eyes filled with a mix of shame and relief. I didn't know how to stop it, he said.